The thick scent of cigar smoke clung to the air of my father's office, as heavy and suffocating as the silence that stretched between us. I stood across his massive mahogany desk, my hands trembling slightly, though I fought to keep my expression steady. My father, Rajiv Kapoor, sat back in his leather chair with the calm composure of a man who had never once been questioned in his life. He exhaled slowly, a long practiced breath of control, and rested his cigar in the silver ashtray, like the conversation was already finished. "This is not up for discussion, Ananya," he said, his deep voice clipped and firm. The word struck me like a slap. My fists clenched at my sides. The sharp ache in my chest had nothing to do with fear. It was fury, bubbling hot, threatening to spill over. "So that's it?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. "You'd rather hand everything over to Rohan, someone who doesn't even care, than let me prove myself? All because I'm a woman?" My father didn't even flinch. His calm eyes, dark and unyielding, locked onto mine as though I were a child throwing a tantrum instead of a woman who had spent her life fighting to be taken seriously. "This firm is for your brother to manage," he said, each word deliberate. "You've done well with your education, and I have no doubt you'll make a fine wife one day. But this..." He gestured vaguely at the documents stacked neatly across his desk, at the shelves lined with thick legal volumes, at the very empire he had built. "This is not your place." My heart sank, but I refused to let him see the crack in my resolve. "My name is Ananya Kapoor, 26 years old, Harvard-educated lawyer, and the daughter of Rajiv Kapoor, owner of Kapoor and Associates, one of the most prestigious law firms in all of Delhi. For as long as I can remember, my life had been a relentless climb up an impossible mountain. Every exam, every debate, every sleepless night poring over case law had been about one thing: proving that I belonged, that I was worthy of taking over the legacy my father had created. And yet, here in this smoke-filled office, surrounded by the polished wood and the weight of power, I realized none of it mattered. Not my grades, not my honors, not even my love for the law. To him, I was just his daughter, someone to marry well and stay out of the way. I stared at him, my voice steadier now. "Rohan doesn't care about this firm, Dad. He's reckless. He barely scraped through college, and he has no idea how to run a business. You know that as well as I do." My father sighed and rubbed his temple, like I was the one being unreasonable. "Rohan will learn," he said firmly. "He's my son, Ananya. It's his birthright to take over Kapoor and Associates. And you," he paused, his tone softening just slightly, like he thought he was being kind. "You have other options. A future that doesn't involve the stress of running a firm. I'm protecting you." A bitter laugh escaped me, sharp and cutting. "Protecting me?" I shook my head, unable to contain the disbelief. "You're not protecting me, Dad. You're holding me back. I've earned this. I've worked harder than anyone, including Rohan, and you know it. But you won't even give me a chance because you're too stuck in your old ways to see what I'm capable of." His expression hardened instantly. His jaw set, and the softness in his eyes vanished. "That's enough, Ananya," he said sharply. "We're done here." Something inside me cracked. Not the kind that breaks and disappears, but the kind that splits open and lets everything out. The rage, the disappointment, the crushing weight of years of trying to win approval that would never come. I turned on my heel and stormed out, my heels echoing sharply against the marble floor of our sprawling estate. The house I didn't belong to. The Kapoor estate was a palace in every sense of the word: gleaming marble floors, towering staircases, glittering chandeliers. But at that moment, it felt more like a prison. As I passed the parlor, I spotted my mother, Meera Kapoor, delicately arranging flowers in a crystal vase. She looked up when she saw me, her expression soft, though wearied by years of compromise. "Ananya," she said gently, her voice laced with quiet concern. "What happened?" I stopped, my chest tightening. "He won't let me work at the firm," I said, my voice breaking despite myself. "He's handing everything over to Rohan, and he expects me to smile and accept it." She sighed, her hands pausing over the flowers. "Your father, he has his ways," she said hesitantly. But maybe it's best not to push him, dear.
He means well.
Her words cut deeper than my father's had. Means well? I repeated, incredulous. He's throwing away everything I've worked for, because I'm a woman. How can you stand there and defend that? Her gaze dropped to the floor, and I saw in her eyes the years of quiet submission, the unspoken sacrifices she had made to keep the peace. I just don't want to see you hurt, Ananya, she said softly. Sometimes it's easier to let things be. Her resignation felt like betrayal. And in that moment, I realized I was utterly alone.
The choice.
That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the weight of my father's words pressed down on me. Memories of endless nights at Harvard, the debates, the sacrifices, all of it replayed in my head like a cruel joke. I had built my life around one dream, to carry forward the legacy of Kapoor and Associates. And now that dream had been snatched away, not because of my ability, but because of my gender. By morning, my decision was made. I was halfway through packing my suitcase when the door to my bedroom creaked open. My mother stood there, her face pale and confused. Ananya, what are you doing? She asked, her voice trembling. Before I could answer, my father appeared behind her, brows furrowed in irritation. What is all this? He demanded, stepping into the room. Where do you think you're going? And then, of course, Rohan arrived. My older brother, leaning casually against the doorframe in his silk robe, smirking like the world was his playground. Packing for a vacation, sis? He asked with a mocking grin. I snapped the suitcase shut and straightened, squaring my shoulders. I'm leaving, I said simply. Since I'm not welcome at the firm and apparently don't belong in this family's plans, I'm going to find a place where I do. My father's face darkened. My mother clutched her pearls, looking like she might cry. Ananya, don't do this, she pleaded. Let's talk about it. There's nothing to talk about, I said firmly. You've all made your priorities clear. My father stepped closer, his voice low and stern. Don't be ridiculous, Ananya. This is your home. Where else would you go? For what? To make some sort of point. I met his gaze, without flinching. Yes, Dad, I said. To make a point. That I'm worth more than being pushed aside for someone who hasn't earned a damn thing. I glanced at Rohan, who smirked wider, clearly enjoying the drama. You made it clear last night that I have no place in your firm. So I'll find a firm that values me. Rohan chuckled. You're really making a big deal out of nothing, Ananya. You're throwing a tantrum just because Dad isn't handing you the keys to the kingdom. That was it. The final spark to my fire. This isn't a tantrum, Rohan, I snapped. This is me taking control of my life. Something you've never had to do, because everything has always been handed to you. My father raised a hand, silencing us both. Enough, he barked. Ananya, you're not leaving. You belong here with your family. I shook my head and picked up my suitcase. No, Dad. I belong somewhere I'm valued. And clearly, that's not here. I walked past them, my suitcase rolling behind me, each step echoing against the marble staircase. My mother followed, her voice trembling. Ananya, please don't go, she whispered desperately. We can figure this out as a family. At the base of the stairs, I stopped and turned to her. Mom, I love you, but I can't keep pretending things will change if I stay. They won't. My father stood at the top of the stairs, his face a mask of control. Rohan lounged against the banister, unfazed, as if my departure meant nothing. I opened the front door, the crisp Delhi morning air rushing against my face. I looked back one last time. When you're ready to treat me like more than just a daughter who needs to marry well, I said, my voice calm but firm, you know where to find me. And with that, I stepped outside. The door shut behind me with a finality that shook the foundations of my life. For the first time, I felt truly free. The first night away from home was harder than I imagined. I checked into a modest service apartment on the quieter side of South Delhi, a far cry from the sprawling Kapoor estate with its marble floors and glittering chandeliers. The bed was smaller, the walls plain, and the silence deafening. For the first time in my life, there were no maids bustling through the halls, No echo of my father's booming voice. No constant reminder of expectations pressing down on me. Freedom should have felt sweet. Instead, it was terrifying. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the single suitcase that contained everything I had chosen to take. My tailored suits, my Harvard law books, a few framed photographs of me with my debate team. I had left behind the luxury, the silk dresses, the jewelry. Those things had never been mine, not really. They were part of the image my parents wanted to project, the perfect daughter from the perfect family. Now, I was just Ananya Kapoor on her own. I lay back and closed my eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. My mind kept replaying the confrontation, my father's cold words, Rohan's smug grin, my mother's tearful resignation. For years, I had dreamed of walking into Kapoor and Associates as a partner, of proving to my father that I was his equal. No, his successor. That dream had crumbled in a single night, and I was left with nothing but the question, what now? The interview. 2 days later, my answer arrived. I had reached out to a handful of law firms across Delhi, sending out my resume and cover letters. My Harvard credentials spoke loudly, but I had always known that most firms saw the Kapoor name and assumed I would join the family practice. Only one responded quickly. Mehra and Partners, a rising firm with a reputation for modern, aggressive lawyering. The firm was led by Arjun Mehra, a sharp, forward-thinking lawyer who had built his practice in just a decade. Where Kapoor and Associates was old money and tradition, Mehra and Partners was sleek, efficient, and hungry. When I walked into their offices for the interview, I felt an instant difference. No heavy cigar smoke. No wood panel halls. Instead, clean glass walls, buzzing assistants, and a sense of energy in the air. Arjun himself greeted me. He wasn't what I expected. Younger than my father, maybe in his early 40s, with piercing eyes and a direct way of speaking. He shook my hand firmly and gestured for me to sit across his desk. I'll be honest, Ananya, he began, leaning back slightly. When I saw your resume, I thought it was a prank. Rajiv Kapoor's daughter applying to my firm? I had to see this for myself. I kept my voice steady. I'm not here as his daughter. I'm here as a lawyer. I want to work. I want to prove myself. His eyes narrowed, studying me. Why not your father's firm? The question hit me like a knife, though I had expected it. Because he doesn't believe I belong there, I said simply. But I know I do belong in this profession, and I'm willing to work twice as hard to prove it. A small smile tugged at Arjun's lips. Good answer. He flipped through my file. Harvard, top of your class, moot court champion, published in law journals. Impressive. But tell me this, what makes you think you can survive here? Mehra and Partners isn't about prestige. We're about grit. We take on messy cases, difficult clients, impossible odds. We don't have the cushion of legacy. Every win, we fight tooth and nail for. I met his gaze without hesitation. Because that's all I've ever done. Fight for something people told me I couldn't have. I didn't get through Harvard on my father's name. I got through because I outworked everyone else. And I'll do the same here. For a moment, silence stretched between us. Then Arjun leaned forward, steepling his fingers. You start Monday. I exhaled, only then realizing I had been holding my breath. A new battle. The first few weeks were brutal. Unlike Kapoor and Associates, where lawyers worked from a place of comfort and tradition, Mehra and Partners was a battlefield. The hours were long, the caseloads demanding, and the clients relentless. I was assigned small cases at first, property disputes, minor contract negotiations, a messy divorce settlement that dragged on for days. But every night, I stayed late, poring over files until my eyes blurred. I prepped for hearings with meticulous detail, anticipating every counterargument, leaving nothing to chance. Slowly, my colleagues began to notice. She's sharp, one whispered in the hallway after I won my first arbitration. She's too intense, another muttered when they saw me still at my desk at midnight. Arjun watched quietly, rarely giving praise, but I could feel his eyes on me. He pushed me harder than anyone else, assigning me tasks that felt impossible. And yet, with each victory, no matter how small, I felt a piece of myself rebuilding. For the first time, I wasn't Rajiv Kapoor's daughter. I wasn't Rohan's overlooked sister. I was just Ananya, the lawyer who delivered results. Loneliness. Yet, as fulfilling as the work was, the nights were unbearable. I would return to my apartment long after midnight, my heels clicking softly against the empty hallways. The silence pressed in on me like a weight. No mother waiting up with a gentle smile. No brother's mocking voice echoing down the corridor. No father sitting in his study, cigar in hand, pretending he controlled the world. I thought I had left them behind without regret. But the truth was more complicated. I missed my mother's presence, even if she had never stood up for me. I missed the chaos of Rohan, infuriating as he was. And worst of all, I missed my father. Not the man who dismissed me, but the man I had once admired, the one I had spent my life trying to impress. Some nights, I would sit by the window with a glass of wine, staring at the city lights, wondering if they thought of me at all. Had my father already replaced me in his mind? Did Rohan even notice I was gone? Did my mother cry herself to sleep? The answers never came. Recognition. Months passed. With every case I won, my confidence grew. The partners began assigning me to bigger clients, and Arjun started calling me into his office more frequently. One evening, after a particularly grueling negotiation that ended in our client's favor, Arjun stopped by my desk. "You handled yourself well today," he said. "Thank you," I replied, surprised at the rare compliment. "You remind me of myself when I started this firm," he added thoughtfully. Hungry, relentless, refusing to take no for an answer. He paused, then gave a small smile. "Keep this up, Ananya. You're going places." His words warmed me in a way I hadn't expected. For years, I had craved validation from my father, bending myself into knots to earn it. Now here was someone who valued me for my skill, not my name. That night, I walked home lighter than I had in months. The storm ahead. But success, I would soon learn, comes with its own set of storms. Late one Friday afternoon, Arjun called me into his office. His tone was serious, his expression unreadable. "Ananya," he said, gesturing for me to sit. "I have a case I think you're ready for. It's big, complicated, high stakes." I leaned forward, my heart quickening. "What kind of case?" He hesitated for just a moment before answering. "We're representing a client in a major litigation against Kapoor and Associates." The air seemed to vanish from the room. "They're suing your father's firm for negligence in a contract dispute. The stakes are enormous, and the case is already drawing media attention. I want you on the team." My breath caught. "You want me to represent someone suing my father's firm?" Arjun nodded. "You know how they operate. You understand their strategies, their weaknesses. And frankly, you're one of the sharpest lawyers we have. If anyone can win this, it's you." I swallowed hard, my mind spinning. "This isn't just another case," I said quietly. "This is my family." Arjun leaned forward, his gaze steady. "I know. And that's exactly why this is your chance to prove yourself, not just to them, but to yourself. Think about it, Ananya. This could define your career." The weight of his words pressed down on me. For years, I had wanted to stand in that courtroom, to prove to my father that I was worthy. But was I ready to face him like this, across the aisle as his opponent? "Can I have some time?" I asked softly. "Of course," Arjun replied. "But not too much. We need to move quickly." I nodded, though my chest tightened with fear. That night, I lay awake once more, staring at the ceiling, the same question haunting me. Was this fate giving me my chance, or daring me to destroy what little remained of my family? I stared at the folder on my desk like it was a loaded gun. Inside were the details of the case that could make or break my career. Kapoor and Associates versus Singh Enterprises. The dispute was over a failed construction contract, delays, cost overruns, alleged negligence on the part of my father's firm. The damages being sought were astronomical, hundreds of crores. It wasn't just about money, it was about reputation. A loss this big could tarnish the flawless image my father had cultivated for decades. For 2 nights, I wrestled with the decision. Should I step back, protect what little remained of my ties to my family? Or should I seize the opportunity, knowing it would put me directly at war with my father and brother? On the third morning, I walked into Arjun's office with my shoulders squared and my mind made up. "I'll take the case," I said. Arjun's lips curved into a satisfied smile. "Good. I knew you would." The first encounter. The first time I walked into the courtroom and saw my father sitting at the opposite table, my throat tightened. Rajiv Kapoor looked as composed as ever, his dark suit immaculate, his face calm. Beside him sat Rohan, smirking in his tailored blazer, twirling a pen like he had already won. When his eyes landed on me, his smirk widened. Well, he said loudly enough for the people nearby to hear. "Look who's finally found herself a playground. Tell me, sis, are you really here to fight us? Or is this just a stunt?" Heat rose in my chest, but I forced myself to keep calm. "Let's see who's playing, Rohan," I said coolly. My father's gaze met mine briefly, unreadable, before he turned back to his papers as though I were just another opponent. The dismissal cut deeper than any insult. Arjun leaned toward me. "Ignore them," he whispered. "Focus on the case." I nodded, gripping my pen so tightly my knuckles turned white. Preparation. The weeks that followed were grueling. Every night, I buried myself in files, dissecting contracts, cross-referencing clauses, analyzing every possible angle Kapoor and associates might use. Arjun pushed me harder than ever. "You know them," he said one evening as we huddled over documents in his office. "You've watched your father argue. You've seen how Rohan bluffs his way through. Use that. Anticipate them. Beat them at their own game." I did. I studied every case Kapoor and associates had ever handled that bore resemblance to ours. I memorized my father's style, his patience, his calculated delivery. I prepared counters for Rohan's brash, overconfident moves. At night, exhaustion tugged at me, but adrenaline kept me awake. This wasn't just a case anymore. It was personal. Every document I highlighted, every witness I prepped, every strategy one mapped out was a step toward proving what my father had refused to see, that I was his equal. Courtroom clash. The day of the opening arguments, the courtroom buzzed with reporters, clients, and curious onlookers. Everyone knew what this was, a family war disguised as litigation. I rose to present our case, my hands steady despite the storm inside me. "Your Honor," I began, "this is not merely a matter of breached contracts. It is about accountability. Singh Enterprises trusted Kapoor and associates to safeguard their interests, and that trust was broken. Today, we will show you how negligence and reckless disregard for obligations cost my client millions." I spoke clearly, deliberately, channeling every ounce of training I had received. When I sat down, Arjun gave me a slight nod of approval. Then my father stood. "Your Honor," he began, his voice calm and commanding, the same voice that had once filled the halls of my childhood home. "Kapoor and Associates has a 50-year record of excellence. The claims brought against us are exaggerated, unfounded, and will be disproven. We will demonstrate that Singh Enterprises failed to meet their own obligations and now seeks to shift blame where it does not belong." His delivery was flawless. He had always been a master of persuasion. A small part of me, the little girl who used to sit in awe watching him prepare for trials, wanted to applaud. But that part was buried now. When Rohan rose to add his comments, his arrogance filled the room. "This is nothing but a desperate attempt by Singh Enterprises to cash in on our reputation," he said, smirking. "And unfortunately, they've hired someone who knows how to play dirty, my own sister." Gasps rippled through the gallery. My jaw tightened, but I kept my eyes fixed on the judge. "Stick to the case, Mr. Kapoor," the judge warned. Rohan raised his hands innocently. "Of course, Your Honor." But his smirk lingered. The grind. Days turned into weeks. Witnesses were examined, documents entered into evidence, arguments volleyed back and forth. I tore apart the contract, highlighting every missed deadline, every overlooked clause that Kapoor and associates should have caught. I cross-examined their witnesses with surgical precision, exposing contradictions that weakened their credibility. Rohan tried to rattle me with snide remarks, but I refused to bite. Every time he grew reckless, I pounced, turning his overconfidence into ammunition. My father, however, was another story. He was calm, meticulous, patient. Facing him was like facing a mountain, unyielding, immovable. Every time I thought I had cornered him, he found a way to turn the argument back. But I didn't back down. For every mountain, there's a climber willing to reach the peak. The turning point. The breakthrough came late one night when I was reviewing an old chain of emails buried in thousands of pages of discovery. One message, dated months before the contract was signed, showed that Kapoor and associates had overlooked a critical risk factor. It wasn't intentional fraud, but it was negligence, undeniable, damaging, and exactly what we needed. When I presented it in court, the room went silent. "Mr. Kapoor," I said, holding up the printed email, "did your firm review this document before advising Singh Enterprises to proceed?" My father adjusted his glasses, his composure flickering for the first time. "This document was not material to the decision," he said evenly. I stepped closer, my voice firm. "Not material?" This document outlined a 6-month delay in raw material supply. A delay that eventually derailed the entire project. "Are you saying your firm did not consider that relevant?" The judge leaned forward, frowning. Reporters scribbled furiously. For the first time, my father hesitated. And in that hesitation, I saw it, the crack in his armor. The settlement. A week later, before the final verdict could be reached, Kapoor and associates approached us with an offer. A massive settlement. Enough to cover Singh Enterprises' losses, plus damages. Arjun called me into his office, holding the letter. "We did it," he said simply. They caved. I stared at the paper, my chest tightening. It was victory. The kind of victory most young lawyers only dream of. And yet, it felt bittersweet. Because across the table, I hadn't just defeated a rival firm. I had defeated my father. When the settlement was announced in court, Rohan stormed out, his face red with fury. My father remained composed, but his eyes lingered on me for just a moment, something unreadable passing through them. Pride? Anger? Regret? I couldn't tell. The reporters swarmed, cameras flashing, microphones thrust toward me. "Ms. Kapoor, how does it feel to defeat your own father's firm?" one shouted. I paused, the weight of the question heavy. "It's not about defeating anyone," I said carefully. "It's about justice. My client trusted me to fight for them, and that's what I did." But deep inside, I knew it was more than that. Much more. The silence. That night, I returned to my apartment, exhausted but unable to sleep. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker against the darkness. I had won. I had proven myself. The world now knew what I was capable of. And yet, my phone remained silent. No call from my mother. No message from my father. No acknowledgement from Rohan. I had defeated them in court. But at what cost? The victory tasted like ash. It had been 3 weeks since the settlement. The media had finally moved on to the next scandal, but the whispers still lingered in Delhi's legal circles. Ananya Kapoor, the daughter who beat her father's empire. Some called it poetic justice. Others called it betrayal. I called it survival. Life at Mehra and Partners had only grown busier since the case. New clients poured in, drawn by the publicity. Arjun treated me not as a junior anymore, but as a trusted partner. My calendar was packed, my name was spreading, and my independence had never been stronger. And yet, the silence from home cut deeper every day. No calls. No letters. Not even a stray message from my mother. It was as if I had been erased from the Kapoor family entirely. Until the knock on my apartment door. When I opened it, my breath caught. My father stood there. Rajiv Kapoor, the man who had dismissed me, belittled me, opposed me. He looked older, somehow smaller than I remembered. His suit was immaculate, as always, but his eyes carried something I had never seen before. Humility. "May I come in?" he asked quietly. For a moment, I considered slamming the door. But something in me, Perhaps the daughter who had once idolized him stepped aside. He walked in, taking in the modest apartment with a glance. It was nothing compared to the estate he ruled, but I realized with a flicker of pride, this was mine. The conversation. We sat across from each other at the small dining table. The silence between us was thick, broken only by the ticking of the clock. Finally, he spoke. "You were remarkable in court," he said. His voice was calm, but softer than I had ever heard it. "I have argued against the best in this country, Ananya. But you caught me off guard." I didn't respond. I wasn't ready to give him the satisfaction of my gratitude. He exhaled slowly. "I underestimated you. I always knew you were bright, but I thought I was protecting you. That this profession would devour you, the way it has devoured me. I didn't want that for you." I laughed bitterly. Protecting me? By dismissing me? By handing everything to Rohan like it was his birthright? His eyes flickered. "Rohan is not ready."
I see that now.
"He may never be." I should have recognized that sooner. "Then why didn't you?" I demanded, my voice rising. "Why was it so easy for you to push me aside? All my life, I've worked to earn your approval. And when I finally stood in that courtroom, the only way you saw me was as an enemy." The pain in my voice cracked something in him. For the first time, Rajiv Kapoor lowered his gaze. "Because I was afraid," he admitted. "Afraid that if I acknowledged your worth, it would mean accepting that my world has changed. That the rules I lived by, the rules that gave me everything, no longer apply. I was blind, Ananya. And for that, I am sorry." The word sorry sounded foreign coming from him. My chest tightened, torn between anger and the aching longing I had carried for years. The offer. After a long silence, he reached into his briefcase and slid a folder across the table. I hesitated before opening it. Inside were documents, legal papers, contracts, agreements. "What is this?" I asked cautiously.
Partnership, he said simply.
Kapoor and Associates is struggling after the settlement. Clients are nervous. Morale is low. They need strength. They need new blood. They need you. I stared at him, stunned. "You're asking me to come back?" "I'm asking you to lead," he corrected. "Not under me. With me. Together. Father and daughter. We can rebuild stronger than before. You have the fire. I have the experience. Rohan, well, perhaps it's time he learns from both of us." The weight of his words settled heavily on my shoulders. This was what I had wanted for so long: recognition, partnership, a place in the legacy of Kapoor and Associates. And now it was within reach. But at what cost? The dilemma. That night, after he left, I sat by the window with a folder on my lap. My mind was a storm. On one side was Mera and Partners, the firm that had given me a chance when no one else would, the place where I had earned my identity, brick by brick, without the shadow of my family name. Arjun had believed in me when my own father had not. Leaving now would feel like betrayal. On the other side was Kapoor and Associates, the empire I had once dreamed of inheriting, the legacy I had bled for, the acknowledgement I had craved since childhood. This was my chance to claim it, to prove not only to my father, but to the world, that I belonged. My heart waged war with itself. Could I forgive him? Could I work alongside the man who had dismissed me for years? Could I trust that his offer was genuine, or was this just desperation to save his firm? And beyond forgiveness, what about independence? I had built a name for myself, free of the Kapoor shadow. Did I really want to step back into it? The city lights blurred through my tears as I whispered the question aloud. What do I want more, legacy or freedom? The choice. The next morning, I walked into Arjun's office, the folder clutched in my hand. He looked up from his desk. "So," he said, reading my face. "He came to you, didn't he?" I nodded. "He offered me partnership." Arjun leaned back, studying me carefully. "And what do you want?" I opened my mouth, but no words came out. Because the truth was, I didn't know. I wanted both. I wanted the legacy I had earned and the independence I had fought for. I wanted my father's approval and my own freedom. But life, I realized, rarely gives us both. Arjun didn't press me. He simply said, "Whatever you decide, make sure it's for you, not for him, not for me, not for anyone else.
Just you."
His words echoed in my mind for days. An open ending. Weeks later, I stood in front of the mirror in my apartment, dressed in a tailored navy suit. On my dresser sat two things: the partnership offer from Kapoor and Associates, and a stack of case files from Mehra and Partners. Two futures. Two paths. My phone buzzed. A message from my father. "The board meets today. The chair beside me is yours if you want it." Another buzz. A message from Arjun. "Client meeting at 10. They specifically asked for you." I looked at myself in the mirror, at the woman I had become, the woman who had fought her way into the courtroom, who had won against impossible odds, who had made the world say her name. I smiled faintly. The choice was mine. And for the first time in my life, that was enough.